Chapter 1 Trouble with a Capital T. Scott Forbes left his friends waiting outside and raced back upstairs to his room to get his baseball mitt. How could he have forgotten anything so important? He burst through the door and took a quick look around. Where was it? He'd had it yesterday. Scott tossed his shirt off the chair and shoved a pile of school papers aside, spilling them onto the floor. No mitt. He dug an armful of clutter out from under his unmade bed. That's where my baseball cap went. Scott snatched up the red cap and crammed it down over his wavy light brown hair. Hurry up, or we'll be late, Rusty O'Hara yelled. Scott dashed to the window and leaned out. Be there in a minute. He slammed the window shut and hurried out the door. Mr. Winowski was not going to let him play in the big field day hardball game between the fifth and sixth graders without his mitt. He'll make me play softball with the Wimps, Scott thought. Rushing past the hall closet, an idea came to him. Dad's mitt was on the top shelf. He jerked open the door and got the mitt down. It was old and scruffy, but it was special to Dad. A long time ago, when Dad was a kid, Gramps had taken him to a major league game, and some of the players had autographed the back of the mitt. Scott hesitated. Maybe he shouldn't take it without permission, but there was nobody home to ask. Mom and Dad had already gone to work. If Dad were home, he'd probably say, Go ahead, son. You can't play without it, and your team needs you out there in center field today. We're going, Kevin Jackson yelled. Nobody would know. His younger brother Raymond had already gone to school. He'd have the mitt back on the shelf the minute school let out. Scott raced down the stairs and out the door. Kev, tall and thin, his tight, curly black hair cut close to his head like a cap, was pedaling down the drive. Scott hopped on his bike. What took you so long? Rusty asked as they started off. He frowned, making his freckles run together. If we're late, nobody ever gets marked late the last day of school. Scott held up the mitt. Now we're all set for the big game. Big, broad, blond Eric Olson, with his baseball cap on backward as usual, looked over and grinned. We're going to beat the socks off those sixth graders today. With me catching, Rusty pitching, Kev at shortstop, and you out in center field, we can't lose. But it didn't turn out that way. Right after lunch, Mr. Winowski and Miss Copeland divided the fifth and sixth graders. Miss Copeland took the softball players to the upper field, and Mr. Winowski took the hardball players to the lower field. Then, instead of letting the fifth grade play the sixth grade, he mixed all together to make two teams. Rusty, Eric, and the new kid in their room named E.J. Bates were on the blue team. E.J., who called himself Tiger and always looked like he was ready for a fight, was picked to play third base. Eric got to catch, but Rusty's older sister, Bernadine, the best pitcher in the school, was on the blue team too. So Rusty had to play second base. Scott and Kev were on the green team. Scott lost his center field position to a taller sixth grader, and Mr. Winowski sent him out to play right field. Kev got stuck coaching third base. Sort of took all the fun out of the game. The blue team stayed one run ahead until the bottom of the fifth inning. Then, with one out, a kid named Arnie hit a grounder past the shortstop, and the green team started a rally. Scott got a single, and Paula, a sixth grader, slammed one over the left fielder's head for a double, driving in the tying run. Hold up! Kev yelled as Scott started around third. Scott planted one foot on the bag just before Tiger caught the ball. While they waited for the next batter, Kev said, "Where do you want to go tomorrow to start off our summer vacation? Down to Mosswood Creek, or out to the old house in the woods, or up to the Sighing Ghost Cave to hunt for hidden treasure?" The Ghost Cave was the last place Scott wanted to go. He knew it wasn't really haunted. That wasn't what scared him. It was the long, narrow passageway he had to go through to get to the cave. Last time he tried to go in there, the walls seemed to close in on him, giving him a panicky, can't breathe feeling. He had to get out of there fast. Where do Rusty and Eric want to go?" Scott asked, hoping they had picked the creek or the old house. "Rusty wants to go to the creek and catch old Oscar. Alan wants that giant crayfish for his zoo and promised to pay $5 for him." Scott grinned. Rusty was always figuring out ways to make money. With 6 kids in the O'Hara family, he didn't get much allowance. "We can talk Eric into going to the creek." The batter hit a high pop-up foul, and Eric caught it. No ghost cave. Scott felt a wave of relief as he trotted back to the dugout for his mitt and ran out onto the field. There were 2 outs, and the bases were loaded when Tiger Bates came up to bat. He hunkered down and waited for the pitch. Ball came over the plate, belt buckle high and fast. Tiger swung. Bat connected. The ball was almost a blur as it streaked for the right field fence and a grand slam home run. Scott leaped higher than he ever thought he could. The ball stung his hand as it smacked into the mitt. Scott fell over backwards. When he got to his feet, the ball was still trapped in the mitt. Grinning, he held it up. Groans and cheers filled the air. Some of Scott's teammates pounded him on the back when he trotted in off the field, as if he just hit a home run himself. It made him feel pretty good. He tossed the mitt onto the bench with the other mitts and swung a weighted bat while he waited for his turn at the plate. They could still win this game. The hope was short-lived. Bernadine struck out the next 3 batters, ending the game in a tie. "Nice catch." Rusty punched Scott on the shoulder. "Too bad you were on the wrong team." Tiger wasn't too happy about losing out on that grand slam. "Yeah, you'd better watch out for him, Scott." Eric stripped off his catcher's mitts and chest protector. "That guy is trouble with a capital T." "Ah, he doesn't scare me," Scott said, hoping they believed him. In the 6 weeks Tiger had been in their class, he'd been ready for a fight with anybody who came close. It was hard to tell what he would do when he got mad. The whistle blew. Scott hurried over to the bench to get Dad's mitt. The mitt wasn't there. With everybody crowding around, maybe he'd missed it. Scott looked again to make sure. "Did one of you guys pick up my mitt?" he called to Rusty and Kev and Eric as they walked away. "It was there a couple minutes ago," Kev answered. "What did it look like?" a blonde 6th grade girl asked as she shoved a bat into the equipment bag. "It was an old one with writing on the back," said Scott. "That kid took it," she said. "What kid?" Scott's heart began to pound. "Dark hair, looks mean as a rattlesnake. He got the ball he hit." She closed the equipment bag and went to collect the bases. Tiger Bates, that crumb. It's no big deal, Kev said when he told them. It's an old mitt. It is too a big deal, Scott shouted. That mitt belongs to my dad. I have to get it back. Let's go tell Mr. Winofsky, said Eric. Before they could find the teacher, the bell rang to go in. Everyone swarmed into the building. There's Tiger, said Rusty when they got back to Miss Copeland's room. Tell him you want your mitt back. Go ahead, Scott, Kev whispered. We're right behind you. Tiger was in the back of the room, alone as usual. Scott's hands were sweaty as he strode down the aisle and stopped in front of Tiger. You took my mitt. Give it back. Scott hoped he sounded braver than he felt. Tiger crossed his arms and sneered at Scott. Who says I took your cheesy old mitt? One of the sixth graders saw you. Where is it? Where you'll never find it. Tiger swaggered up the aisle to his seat near the door. His lips stretched into a mean grin. Miss Copeland called, People, please take your seats. I will pass out your report cards in alphabetical order. When I call your name, come up to my desk. The first name she called was E.J. Bates. Tiger took his report card, then bent down and said something to Miss Copeland. She nodded. Tiger turned with a smirk on his face and walked right out the door. By the time she called Scott's name, Tiger was long gone.